like to start every show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what are the experts talking about? Why are they bothering to use that jargon term? And honestly, at the bottom of it, what does this mean and how does it play out in my life? How can this help me to get to that progress that I'm looking for? Because if it doesn't, I don't want to know, right? I don't have time for that. So we take it one word, one phrase, one acronym at a time. We give you the actual definition. I particularly love to make fun of them because they make no sense usually. Sometimes they do. And then we give you a working definition, which we enjoy watching the BCBAs break out into hives because we put it in terms that they go, not really, whatever. We have to get a way in, right? So that we begin to understand how can I implement this in my life and why is this meaningful to me and why should I care that you said it? Okay, that's what it's all about. So today's term, and one of our favorite viewers that we have on the show who keeps us on our toes assures me that we do not already have a video for this, but I know that we've done and we've talked about non-contingent reinforcement before. So I don't know why we don't have a video on it, but non-contingent reinforcement. Doesn't that just sound like something you'd rather run screaming to the hills than know what it is? Except that it can be, you're already doing it. Let's say that. You're already doing it. And if you start doing it mindfully, and we're going to talk about mindfully in just a few minutes, but if you start using this to your benefit and choosing when you use it, it can be a very powerful thing. So what in the hey nani nani is non-contingent reinforcement? Let's take a look at our actual definition. Non-contingent reinforcement is a procedure in which stimuli with known reinforcing properties are presented on a fixed time or variable time schedule. Like, what does that mean and why do we care? It just sounds so dry. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so let's look at what our working definition is and see if we can't crack the code on this. Non-contingent reinforcement, the child is given reinforcement on a schedule, wait for it, regardless of whether they have demonstrated the behavior or not. Okay, so normally in the rules of behavior, when we're doing ABA, we always talk about, this three-step thing that, there's an antecedent to behavior, a consequence, right? The antecedent is that something happens, and then there's a behavior, and then there's a consequence for the behavior. And that when we monkey with these things, that we can change the antecedent and we can get a different behavior, and we can change the consequence and get a different behavior. And this is all very, very powerful. And we're always making sure that we're reinforcing, giving a pleasant consequence for behavior that we want to see. So we've set this all up, and now we throw the monkey wrench in and say, yeah, no, give a reinforcer whether they do the behavior or not. Why would I want to do that? That sounds crazy to me. And it does. It sounds crazy, but we do this all the time. Let's do it mindfully. Think about it this way. A lot of the time when we use non-contingent reinforcement, it's attention. So I'm a former teacher, and I this year it's all about the teachers for me. Not all, but a new segment is all about the teachers. But we all, whether we've been a teacher or not, know the kid who is the empty bucket. You know what I'm talking about? That they just need so much attention, and it feels like you're never going to get their bucket full of attention. I always mentally picture them standing there with a bucket going, please, sir, I want some more. Right? Well, here's the thing with attention is that for kids who are driven by attention and will act out because they're not getting attention, remember, it doesn't matter whether the attention is good or bad, they will act out to get the attention. And so what we want to do, this is an antecedent strategy. It means we're going to do it before the behavior happens in hopes of creating an environment in which, we don't need that behavior, right? We make the behavior, superfluous. Why would I need to act out if you're already giving me buckets of attention? So as a teacher, when I would identify that there was a kid in the classroom who just, so needy. It's funny, I was talking about a kiddo recently because I used to go into my son's school and direct a play every year. I'm missing it because I didn't get to do it this year. But I would go in and I'd have to work very quickly with the kids because I only had an hour with them like 2 or 3 times a week to get a play together across a 5-week period. I didn't have time to frog around, and sometimes there were 40 kids in the classroom. And so I would have to very quickly identify, like, you know, who do I need to rein in? Like, who's not on task, right? And a lot of times it's kids who need a lot of attention. It could start with the kid who's just raising their hand every time you say one word and you're just like, I need to get something done here, right? Or it could be the kid that's pulling on somebody's hair to get your focus off of. And I go, attention kid. That's a kid that needs attention. So I would start to give that child non-contingent reinforcement. It means I'm just gonna shower them with attention, and I'm gonna do it. I can do it. We talked about a variable or a fixed time. There are some teachers and some kiddos that set, like, you know, you can do it with your Apple Watch or something that vibrates, that you start with, every 30 seconds, I'm going to give this kid attention. And it's going to be positive attention, right? That, you know, great job, Joey. Hey, I like what you're doing there. It could be as simple as that. And it reminds you, it just buzzes. The kid doesn't know, but you get a little vibrate. Time to say something good to Joey, or just make eye contact with Joey so that he, you know, he's getting that attention, right? So that would be on a fixed time, or if it's variable, it could just be that, you know, just whenever it occurs to you, but just often, right? It could be constant. There was one kid in particular one year with a play that he just needed some attention, and I said, you know what? Do you know what I see in you? I see the potential to be an assistant director. I need for you to come and stand next to me. And I put my arm around this guy and I was like, you're doing a great job. But I had my hand on his arm and I would give him a little squeeze because maybe I got to be talking to some of the other kids. And I would turn to him and say, what do you think? You know, constant. Eventually, you know, the bucket got full enough that I could have him, you know, be 5 feet away from me, but I'm still given, you know, that attention. So this is what we do. It's non-contingent reinforcement. It's not based on anything else. And it's usually the circumstances, it's attention. And we're just giving it freely. Because if we do, we see that those kids shine. They just, you know, it's like giving water to a flower. Man, they blossom. And they turn into the good kid. It sounds so hard, like, oh my gosh, I got to do one more thing. I got to give this kid attention on a regular basis. But here's the truth of the matter of non-contingent reinforcement when it's a positive thing, is you feel better. Because it forces you to look for something, you know, to reinforce and go, hey, great job, you know, or just give them a squeeze. You feel better. You feel more connected to that person. They feel better. Their behavior changes. And it's just this chain reaction that ends up really wonderful. I always tell the story of a young man when right after 9/11, I went back into the classroom. I hadn't been in a classroom in a while, and I went back into a classroom. I went into a high school classroom to teach, and it was some pretty tough, rough kids in a rough neighborhood, and that were having a rough time. They'd been through a bunch of teachers, and their teacher was sitting with them on 9/11 and quit during 9/11 and said, if the world's going to end, I don't have time to be here, right? Send that message to a group of kids. And then they had like 3 teachers in that time from 9/11 to I started on November 1st, right? And they were out of control. And they were just waiting for me to leave. When was I going to quit on them too? And there was one young man that on the very first day, I was up standing in front of the classroom, because I believe that's what teachers do. They don't sit at desks. They stand in front of the classroom, and I was talking to them, and I felt a whoosh and a crack behind me because he had taken a AA battery and thrown it at my head. He missed. Like, I felt it go by my ear, and it cracked the blackboard behind me. Cracked it because he threw it that hard. And I did not give attention to that. But within a couple of days, I was able to figure out which one of the young gentlemen in the classroom had done that, and to see that attention was part of his issue. And I began to fill that bucket as best I could. under the circumstances, right? You do what you can. And the next year, he was picked to be the student of the month. These things can happen, and you can't underestimate what kind of an impact you can have in a child's life when you go from being a kid who feels like they got to throw a battery at the blackboard to being a kid who's the student of the month. I know when his mom came in and said, you know, I don't know where you came from, but thank you. Like, I felt like this is a powerful tool, is what I felt like. This is a powerful, powerful tool. And that's for a kid that, you know, that you see in the world, right? Imagine how powerful this can be when it's your own personal kid and the relationship you have with your own personal kid when you give non-contingent reinforcement. All kids need attention. Make sure that you're giving some of this at some time.